Good evening all, and welcome. The world around you is what you perceive it, of course. But is it possible that there's more than meets the eye? Strange things occur on a daily basis that defy logic and explanation. Are they just paranormal events? Or perhaps glitches in our reality itself? I'll leave that for you to decide. Final notice, the Patreon offer is ending soon, so if you'd like to benefit from these rewards, sign up to Patreon now using the link in the description. But without further ado, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. Back when I was a kid, early to mid-90s, our town was a bit smaller than it is now, meaning we sort of knew nearly every store or business inside it. We weren't a small town in the middle of nowhere though. It was a suburb of Baltimore and DC. I was around 9 when I remembered clear as day that my parents ordered me this colourful wooden bed from a local store that sat in the same shopping centre as our main 7-Eleven. I would ask when the bed would come, and sometimes my parents would say very soon, but other times they had no clue as to what I meant. As years went on, I would ask about it whenever we would drive by the shopping centre, and like years prior, the answers were always mixed. Sometimes they would say, "What bed?" and other times, "Yeah, we cancelled it when we got the daybed." During my junior year of high school, I was taking driving lessons in the same centre with my cousin. When I told him about this, he would joke about it just being some fluke. One day while waiting to get picked up, we decided to go in there. And I swear the same man I remember that sold us the bed was in there, not even aged. He greeted us, and I asked if they ever sold kids' beds. He said no, that they usually sell couches and the sort, and I told him about the bed, and he said he'd never seen such a thing. Fast forward a few years later, a high school friend goes shopping for a bed for her son. Where does she go? And what does she buy? That bed. The one I remembered buying but never getting. What's worse is she got it from the same store. I flip because it felt like my whole life was a lie. I decide to go back to that store, this time with her since I knew for a fact she bought the same bed and that the damn man is there. This time he did look older but not by much. Anyhow, I asked him why he told me a long time ago that they never sold kids' beds, when this girl just bought one. I thought my parents brought it for me as a kid 15 years ago. He proceeded to tell me that they have always sold kids' beds, and that the model she bought is one of their oldest selling. My cousin even remembers the guy saying that they never sold kids' beds, so I'm not alone on that. I still don't know what happened. I gave up after that. It was bizarre and freaked me out. I will swear to God that I remembered that bed, and I remember my parents getting it. That store is still there, with its same old sign, and I imagine the same old man. This happened 3 times, with 3 different people. I grew up in a 2-story house in the Philippines. Upstairs there was a huge playroom and 4 bedrooms. When I was around 11 years old, me and my babysitter were hanging out in the playroom. She went to the bathroom, and I got bored, so I went downstairs to check out the fridge. I heard her come out the bathroom, and she started screaming my name. After the 3rd time, she stopped. I thought she figured out that I was downstairs, and after a few minutes, I saw her coming down the stairs. As she looked at me, she froze and just stared at me. I asked her what was wrong, and she said she saw me in the playroom before she went downstairs. She was really freaked out about it. And I don't know, I used to not believe in these things, so I just laughed at her. The second time it happened, I was probably 16. I was hanging out in my brother's room because it's the room with the fastest internet, and then I heard my 6-year-old brother, as I have 2 brothers, calling me and looking around for me. I didn't answer back and just waited for him to find me. I saw him go into my room and then he got quiet. I thought he was looking for something and just found it. As he was walking out my room, he saw me in my brother's room and he just froze and stared like my babysitter. I asked him what was wrong and he said, "Why are there 2 of you?" And that's when I freaked out and ran to my mum's room. She laughed at us, but I remember sleeping in her room that night. The last time it happened was when I was 20. My parents were on vacation with my youngest brother, so me and my other sibling had to stay at my grandparents' house at night. The first night they were away, me and my sister decided to go home and get more clothes. We were both in my room because she likes to borrow some of my clothes, and I told her that I'm going to take a shower. That's when she left and went to her room to pack more clothes. I went to the bathroom and started brushing my teeth. As I was about to get into the shower, my sister walked into the bathroom, and she looked at me so weirdly and her face turned pale. So I asked her what was wrong. She said she went back into my room and she was talking to me, but then she had to pee, so she went to the bathroom and found me here. We both looked at each other, grabbed our stuff, and left. I still don't know why or what it is, but it still creeps me out when I think about it. This happened a long time ago, back when I was dating my boyfriend Tim. I decided to visit him. We lived in separate areas at the time, and we had a good time. And after staying with him for a few, he brought up the idea of going to Land's End. Tim mentioned how it used to be a swimming pool next to the ocean, and that his mum used to go there when she was little. It had since burnt down, but had a nice view and an even greater view of the sunset. We had planned on going the next day, but Tim woke up late, so we went the day after. After maybe 20 or so bus rides later, we arrived. At the top, there was a path leading downwards. It stopped on flat ground with a path leading to the right and another path continuing down. The path on the right went on for a little bit before it stopped at the mouth of a tunnel. Inside the tunnel was a path that led to the other side. While inside the tunnel, you could see something dripping and ocean waves. The path on the other side was long enough to fit maybe 4 or 5 people before it suddenly ended with a gap, disconnecting it from the continuing path on the other side. The gap was large enough that if you tried jumping to the other side, you'd probably fall or have a small chance of making it. On the other side, there was a wall on the right with rubble around it. Beneath us was a long trip down into the ocean. The downwards path continued before stopping on flat ground. On the left, there were broken walls, some curving, some straight, with most being small and flat enough to walk on. Others were higher and took squarish shapes. These places were filled with shallow water. Tim and I first decided to stop at the higher area and look around. We went through the tunnel, enjoyed the ocean view before moving to the lower area to explore. We both walked around the area and explored some more, walking on some of the paths to kill more time. As night approached, we headed back to higher area as Tim mentioned the view would be better, and he was right. We were joined by a group of people, and we all watched the sun set in the sky. Tim and I decided to stay later to watch the moon, something I enjoy. As we stood watching the moon, more and more left before we were the only people left. As it got later, we witnessed a sight. The moon was moving. not in the slow crawl it usually does, but more like it was taking a light jog across the sky. We both thought it odd and strange, so we decided to see if we could see it on the platform of the other side of the cave, so we headed in. We were using our phones to help lighten the area as we walked. I had noticed that the sounds heard from earlier were gone, and were instead replaced with silence. We came to a stop hearing a growling noise. We looked around with our phones, but couldn't find the source of the noise. It wasn't like a stomach growling, but more along the lines of an animal. We both ran out of there and hightailed it back out to the walkway entrance. When we got back to the entrance, Tim mentioned the moon. Turning towards it, I looked at it in shock. Instead of being in a spot along with its jogging path, it was back to where it was before it started jogging. It was as if the moon had been reset. This happened to me just last month. I'm currently dog sitting for my best friend and staying at her house while doing so. Some context. I watch this dog every weekend for half of the year, and I'm over at her house all the time when my friend comes home. The dog is female, and she's very unfriendly to anyone she doesn't know. She'll literally bite people that she doesn't know very well, even if they've met a few times. Even with her owner and myself, she's often very standoffish, and will bite if she's in a mood. She's also not big into cuddling, especially at night and in bed. The dog is like a cat. You have to do things on her terms, or risk being snapped at. With that being said, she would not leave me alone last night. Around 3 AM, I woke up to her insistently licking my face and trying to be close to me. I'd shove her away, and she'd just crawl back up to me and wake me up again. When I buried my face to keep from getting licked, she just dug into the covers to get close to me. She'd eventually leave me alone for a short while, after practically crawling on my head to sit as high on the pillow as possible and pulling my hair by doing so. After several bouts of being uncharacteristically woken up like this, I thought that maybe she just really needed to use the bathroom. I reluctantly took her out and went back to bed. Not long later, she woke me up doing it again, but this time whining when I'd shut her out by hiding under the blankets, thinking that maybe the heater was on or that I was scaring her. I turned it off, and with the heater no longer making noise, that's when I heard it first. It was a click-click sound of a dog walking around on the hardwood floor. It's a distinct sound, and one that I'm very familiar with. The thing is, the dog was in bed. Thinking I was just hearing things with the sound adjusting in the room, I ignored it and laid down to fall back to sleep. Once again, the dog kept licking me, whining and crawling all over my head. I was absolutely baffled, as to this point, I had been dog sitting regularly for over 2 years and had never seen her act like this. Normally, if an animal or person comes nearby, she'll go into protective growl mode. This was something else entirely. I sat up, looked at her, trying to figure out what was wrong, and that's when I heard it a second time, distinctly. Not only did I hear it, the dog heard it too. She clearly responded to the sound, whined, then nuzzled closer to me. I looked around the bed, but nothing was there. Realizing that it was probably just another glitch and not an animal that had somehow gotten in, I decided to return to bed. This dog, that usually never lets anyone cuddle her for more than 5 minutes, let me sleep because I pulled her into a hug and stayed like that. I was absolutely amazed to wake up hours later to her still under my arm. Maybe we're both hearing a parallel version of her walking around, and that spooked her out. Normally, she goes into instant bark or growl mode, often frantically running up to the windows growling when she hears a raccoon or another animal outside. Whatever the case, I think what we heard in the room wasn't normal. Her reaction is testament enough for me. When I was younger, I used to go round my nana's house to watch TV after school. She had Sky TV, and we did not. So I'd always want to get my fill of cartoons. I'd always ring her in the morning and ask if it was okay. Now I can't say for definite if I rang her on this morning. I feel like I would have done, but I can't be certain. So I go round and knock and nobody comes to the door. I try to open it and it was unlocked, which is unusual in itself because my nana's house had been broken into not too long before, and she was pretty good at ensuring its security. So I get inside and call my mum to tell her that I'm at nana's but that no one's home. She says she'll send my sister, as she must have been 17 at the time. My nana only lives 2 streets away from my mum, so my sister got there pretty fast. I don't know how much time passes, but at some point there's a knock on the door. My sister, being a bit of a wimp, she sent me. Now what's really strange is how you get to my nana's back door. She lives in a terraced house, but is one of those streets where every 10 or so houses there's a break for a little alley that leads into people's back gardens. To get to the back door you have to walk past the front door, go down this alleyway, through the garden and up the back door. Also, the conversation went like this. "Does your nana still live there?" "Yeah, I'm her grandson." "Oh, I was looking for your nana." Now the way he spoke was kind of airy and confused. He didn't explain who he was, why he wanted my nana or anything, and I don't remember how we ended the brief conversation. I just remember turning to my sister, who was cowering in the hallway, and her telling me he looked exactly like my granddad. I can see it all clearly, and he was his absolute double. Now the disappointing part. I can't remember anything else. I don't know where my nana was. I don't know why her door was unlocked. I know my sister said at the time to not tell my mum because she thought it might upset her. But looking back, it was all just so weird, because my grandpa had passed years before. So about 3 or 4 years ago when I was still in college, I went over to my friend's apartment because we had a group homework thing to do. It got pretty late, but we got there maybe at 6 or 7 p.m, and it was probably around midnight or 1 a.m. at the time. All of us were smokers, cigarettes, terrible habit back then. So we went down to the common area of the building which had a pool and some seats to hang out. But more importantly, it was an outdoor area with no roof over our heads, to take a smoke break from all the homework, which had been mostly finished at this point, and just hang out. This whole pool area was completely deserted at the time except for us, but it was near the main entrance of the building and the only other person nearby besides us, as we were a group of 5, was the doorkeeper of the building. In any case, now that I've set the scene, this is what happened. It was around 2:30 or 3 a.m, and the sky all of a sudden got clear. And I mean not clear as in daytime, clear kind of like dawn, which was weird because in my city sunrise, it happens at about 5:30 to 6 a.m. So it's definitely still early, and we all got freaked out. Even the doorkeeper left his station and came near us and said, "It's really early to be this bright, right?" To which we all agreed. It was far too early in the AM for it to be this clear, and I mean it wasn't like it suddenly became daytime, but definitely clearer. We could see shapes of buildings and billboards that just seconds ago were too dark to see. We all got freaked out, but not scared, so we just kind of talked about it amongst ourselves. None of us had ever seen anything like that before. It was no later than 3:30 a.m. when this happened. We stayed there until 4 a.m, just talking and hanging out. Then I drove home. All this time it never got dark again. but I was in bed before it was normal for the sun to rise in my city, and never gave it another thought until I realized it could have been a glitch. I had never experienced something like that in my life before, and never have since. I went back to my friend's apartment and hung out at the exact same area at about those hours in the AM a bunch of times, after having that over the next 2 to 3 years of college. None of us ever experienced anything like that day again. It is completely out of the ordinary or normal for it to be as clear as it was at that hour in my city. I've never seen it happen again. It was 3 AM, it was pitch black a second ago, and then it got clear like you'd expect at 5 or 6, just when the sun is setting and it's starting to get dark. I'll be driving in the highway at night, and it's mostly empty. Then I'll notice a car in my mirrors coming up, usually on the left side, but I can't say for sure. It happened on the right side too. Then I'll go back to watching the road before checking my mirrors again. But when I check, the car is gone. I hadn't passed any exits, and I live in a semi-urban area where there are usually barriers on the side of the road, so there's no way the car could have disappeared off to the side. It's happened multiple times. It's not a common occurrence, but also it's happened enough times that I no longer attribute it to my mind playing tricks on me. I wonder if anyone else has experienced this strange event. One Friday, my stepmom picked me up to take me to my dad's house, like a usual Friday. We drove down our normal route home, which was through a wooded area which leads onto the main road, which we take directly to where my dad lives. Anyway, as we were driving through the wooded area, we were just talking, listening to the radio, where we came to an N-shaped road. Like I said, we were just chatting, minding our own business, when a car starts coming around the corner on the N-shaped road in front of us, with its lights at full beam. This is the middle of the day, so we can see clearly, and there's no need for headlights to be on. It seemed to be coming round rather fast, but we didn't pay it much mind. The road was very narrow in the woods, so as it approached, my stepmom pulled over like the normal procedure to allow this car to pass. Just to look up and see it vanish from reality in front of our eyes. This freaked us out a lot. From what I remember from the car, it had its headlights on full beam and may have been a white color, and didn't look really old either, maybe 90s plus. This event happened about 2 years ago now, and I remember it very clearly. Last night, I had a glitchy experience. I bought oregano oil capsules, and I take them before bed. I specifically took one out, put it in my mouth, and swallowed it and left my room. I came back to my room and noticed that there was an oregano capsule on my bed. Weird, I thought to myself. I just took one. So I put the capsule back into the bottle, along with the others, and left my room. I came back to my room after showering, and the exact same capsule was on my bed in the exact same place as before. I started freaking out, because I remember taking a capsule specifically, and also putting the one that was on my bed back into the bottle. There was no one home but me, and then when I was walking out of my room, I heard my mirror that was hung up on the wall fall off and hit my record player, and I thought, this is gonna be messy to clean up. I walked back into my room, and everything was perfectly in place and nothing had moved. Am I having a stroke or experiencing a glitch? So this happened about 8 years ago. It's me and 2 friends in my car chilling in the driveway. We were talking and they were talking. I noticed this cat of pure white sitting 20 feet in front of us. Now my friend doesn't have a white cat, so I was intrigued. 5 minutes or so pass, and the cat is still sitting in the same spot. I finally told my friends, "Hey, what's up with this cat in front of us?" All our eyes went to the cat, and it instantly vanished. We all saw it and began tripping out. One friend said it looked like it melted into the ground. I still question it to this day, and my two friends still remember that moment. I was leaving a friend's house around 10 p.m. back in mid-December. I was sober and wide awake, as my plan was to go home and finish some quick chores left over from the day. We had heavy rain and weird clouds all day. No lightning though. So when I was getting into my car and noticed the cloud cover seemed to have bright red glows in it, I assumed it was the light from the nearby university refracting strangely into the thick clouds. I got into my car and headed home. My house was a short drive away, 7 to 8 minutes tops. Suddenly the entire sky lit up pink, blue, green, and yellow, in rapid and repeating succession for 10 seconds. The lights seemed to have had no point of origin or bright center, but was coming from behind the clouds as I could see their shapes in front of the flashes. The sky was evenly bright from horizon to horizon, and there was no relative noise. Then it happened again. Random colors flashing brightly for maybe 5 seconds, then darkness. Then again, then 5 seconds before it was totally dark once more. And that was the last time I saw it. I don't know how to explain this one. Near our house is a small greenhouse of a local tea company, which is often lit up with lots of wacky colors. And if the clouds are low enough, we will occasionally see the light very dimly reflected in the sky. I can't blame this on those. It was far too bright, too far-reaching, and was flashing, not holding a steady color. I also saw that recent video of the transformer exploding in New York City, and this was similar, but what I saw was more than just bluish-white. It was like as if the entire sky was weirdly colored that day for a few seconds at a time. No centralized source of light like a blown transformer would give off. This really freaked me out, for probably no reason, but I definitely stepped on it the rest of the way home. I haven't seen anything like that since, and we've definitely had some similar clouds. I know lightning is capable of giving off unusual colors, but in rapid and changing succession like this? When I mentioned it to friends, they all dismissed it with a quick, "Weird." Any input into this would be greatly appreciated. The other day, I was walking back from the bus and walked down my street. I was sober, well rested, had eaten food and was wide awake. I had not been exposed to carbon monoxide. I noticed the houses were different, and I started to think I had somehow walked down the wrong street, though I had seen the site for my street when I got off the bus. I figured I'd walk to the main street and go back up my block, but then I saw my own address. I was confused. It was a slightly different house, a little newer, and it didn't seem to be a fourplex like mine. I didn't know what else to do, so I knocked on the door. A woman answered, and I explained I was looking for 1234 Myrtle Court, and she said that this was it, and asked me what I wanted. I said I was a little lost, and was she sure? She was getting suspicious and annoyed and said, "Of course, why?" I stuttered something about thinking my house was here, and she asked if I was on drugs and threatened to call the cops, so I apologized and left. I was in denial. And at the end of the road I noticed a taco place that isn't on my street normally. Usually, it's a few blocks away. On my actual street, there's a mechanic, where there is a burger place across from it. I started walking towards it because at least it was something normal. When I turned on the main street, things seemed to return to normal. I walked the few blocks down to my house, which was now there, and everything was in its usual place. I was so freaked out I avoided that part of the neighborhood for a while. When I did eventually go back, it was the same number but a different street, and the house looked different than the one the woman lived in. The taco place was on the wrong side of the street, and I had really just been hoping I was just turned around. Last year, I was driving down the US, Route 90 in Ohio, going to an old friend's house. We had driven out of the town that they were living in on unrelated business. On the way back to their old spot, 90W bound, we run into construction that was happening at the time on overheads. Pretty sure they restructured the fencing things, or something along that route. Anyway, we are seeing the exit signs for Lorraine, and I think to myself, hey, a few more exits and we're there. Here is where the glitch happens. I see the sign again. Also, the route has a very, very slight right curve as you pass under said sign. I think to myself, didn't we just pass this? And one of the other people in the car says, didn't we just pass this sign? I respond with, yeah, that was weird. The third person in the car goes, what are you guys talking about? And for the moments, talked about the event. I haven't thought about it too much. Maybe just an instance of tunnel vision. But on every fiber of my body and everything I love, I drove under that sign twice that day, and I will never forget that. Can someone please help me explain this? It's really weirded me out. I was napping in my childhood room in my old bunk bed around 5 PM, which I share with my older sister. I'm napping in the top bunk, which is relatively close to the ceiling and against a wall. Walls and ceilings are a smooth blue color. My sister is chilling in the bottom bunk on her laptop. We are 23 and 25. Both came home for the weekend for my brother's birthday. She answers the phone call, which wakes me up. I open my eyes, and all over the walls and ceiling are small triangles with rounded corners and dots in the middle. Each cluster of triangle forms a pattern of flowers, 5 triangles each, all the tips facing towards the center. These flower clusters all lined up evenly and orderly, covering my walls and ceiling everywhere. They weren't scattered randomly. The pattern wasn't a specific color, translucent or transparent. I stared in shock, confused, and amazed for 2 to 3 minutes, before shutting my eyes for 3 more minutes and opening my eyes to see they were gone. Now, to get into the details. I've had sleep paralysis before. This wasn't it. I was very much awake, could move, and even sat up to check out this pattern. I often have false awakenings too, but I assure you I was very much awake. There was no strange reflection of light, nor was the light shining in my eyes so that I could have imprinted a pattern when I looked around. The pattern stayed on the walls whenever I moved my eyes. It didn't move with my eyes. The pattern was so technical that it's why I explained it as a force field-like. It reminded me out of something of a sci-fi movie. At first I thought it was my contacts. Maybe they were dry because I fell asleep with them. I've never ever had that happen to me before, and I often fall asleep with my contacts. Plus, that pattern, it was so particular. I've never seen that pattern anywhere before, but something about it was almost computer-like. Has this happened to anyone before? I'm just trying to figure it out. It's so weird, I just had to share it. Early one afternoon, my wife and I decided to head to the store. It was a clear and sunny summer day as we approach a one-way turn up ahead. We were 150 yards away, when suddenly we noticed the figure of a woman emerge from the road, moving oddly and seemingly putting on a dress. We deemed it odd. We figured they must have been down in the sewers and crawled out of the manhole. But upon reaching the end of the street, there was no manhole, only the solid pavement of the street. The woman, disheveled and barely dressed, walked into an alleyway behind a strip mall. I'd seen this woman around town before, and she is very clearly mentally ill, often ranting and raving like lunatics as she walks down the street. But this kind of event fried my brain for a while. The whole thing was very surreal, as we clearly saw this woman appeared to have crawled out of the street, but there was nowhere she came from. It left us pretty unsettled, and we still are to this day. Today I arrive at work, and do the usual when I get in. Go to my desk, set down my purse and clock in. Now everyone at work carries walkie-talkies. It's how we communicate to each other because we are spread out throughout multiple buildings. Everyone has their own walkie and is labeled with their name on it. Part of my morning routine also includes grabbing my walkie so I don't miss it out on any useful information. We have a station where all the walkies are kept on charges at night, so when I go and grab mine, I check to make sure I've picked the right one. This is important to note, because most people might not double check this. But I have another girl who's got a similar name to me. It's only one letter off. Every time I grab my walkie from the chargers, I always have to double check that I have my walkie and not the other girl's. So I know for a fact that I grabbed mine with my name on it. Now sometime later, I grab my walkie out of my pocket as I go to use it for the first time today, and read the name on the walkie, Matt. Now Matt absolutely never uses his walkie, so it's always sitting on the charger. There's no way I just accidentally picked up his walkie-talkie and misplaced it with my own, seeing it as he never uses it. I went back to the charging bay, and sure enough there's mine sitting on the charger. I know with absolute certainty that I picked my own up this morning. I physically picked it up and double-checked that I had it with my name, and not the other girl's, before putting it in my pocket. I was in my bedroom sorting laundry, and I was listening to a YouTube video on my phone. I have YouTube Red, so my phone was locked while the video played. I thought I'd heard a strange noise and thought perhaps one of the dogs was getting into something. I had thought to myself, wow, I really can't hear over this radio, I should probably pause to listen. But my lazy ass decided not to, and I continued sorting laundry. My boyfriend was on dog watch anyway, so it wasn't my problem. Then for no reason whatsoever, the video just stopped playing on my phone and fell silent. It just stopped, and I chuckled to myself because I knew how strange that was. I took the opportunity to listen for the strange noise and heard nothing. I ended up checking to make sure the dogs definitely weren't getting into anything, because I thought that was a clear sign from the universe to go check. Everything seemed fine, so I resumed listening to my video and sorting laundry. This next one is when I was sitting on my couch in the living room watching TV. I had seen the dog going into the kitchen, and seeing as he's a 5-month-old puppy, I didn't like when he's out of sight. I called for him to come to me, and instead of running out the kitchen like he should have, he came running out the hallway coming from the back bedroom. I know for a fact I had literally just seen him go into the kitchen. This last thing happened this morning, and I'm still quite shaken up over it. On Sunday morning I had woken up to find that neither my boyfriend nor I had remembered to lock the front door. So last night I had double checked that the door was locked before heading to bed. This morning I had woken up and did my usual, which was roll out of bed, plop myself on the couch in the living room to browse social media while I convinced myself to wake up. I lay there for 15 minutes until I decide to start my day. I sit up off the couch and look up at my front door. It's open about a foot. Surprisingly, my first instinct was to find the cat and make sure she didn't get out. I ran all over the place calling for her, and then ran into my bedroom to wake up my boyfriend. At this point, my cat came out of her sleeping place to greet me, and I was relieved to see that she was safe. In my panicked state of mind, I had told my boyfriend what had happened, and he asked me if anything was missing. I'm not sure why that thought never occurred to me. He got up and checked all the rooms and closets to make sure no one had broken in, and we found nothing amiss. I have no explanation as to why or how the front door was open. I do wish to add one more thing that happened that was very strange. This happened about 2 weeks ago. I was just finishing up cooking dinner, and my boyfriend was going to go run to the party store to grab some pop. I was standing in the kitchen at the stove. Our front door is right outside the kitchen, and maybe 30 seconds after he left and shut the door, I saw the door start to swing open. I thought he had forgotten something and was coming back inside. My 1-year-old dog was sitting right outside the doorway, acting a little excited. And after a few moments go by and I don't see him come through the door, this raises some concerns. I work up the courage to go look behind the door or the doorway, and no one's there. Thank goodness I have a highly trained dog, and she didn't run out the door. I immediately call my boyfriend and tell him what happened. We both kind of agreed he must not have latched the door all the way. After what happened with the door today, I'm not open to believing that something is just wrong with the front door. We tried playing with the door today just to try and recreate it happening on its own, but we couldn't get it to do it. I do, however, stand by what I said in knowing the door was locked last night. At our school, we have an upstairs and a downstairs. Well, I just got out of class and had seen a girl downstairs, then went upstairs to sit where I usually do, and she comes out the office, and this is strange, because she was walking somewhere else, and the only way she could have made it there was if she passed me without me noticing, or she went outside and up the ramp really quickly, and she had just a shirt and it was freezing outside. This has happened another time with another person, I think the same day or the day before. In my class, I saw this girl grabbing some brown paper towels for a project we were doing, and then went to go get some, and the paper towel was white? I had not long passed my driver's test, and as an 18-year-old, I was never not driving my car. It was late one night, and I had just dropped off a friend at his house. I was driving up a very familiar road to get onto the motorway. There were no other cars in sight, and my music was pretty loud. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a small black cat seemingly waiting to cross the road that I was driving on. It must have been about 10 meters ahead of me on the other side of the road. I was doing about 40 miles per hour, and I figured it would either wait, or even if it ran across the road, I would have passed it before it was in any danger. Just at that, the cat seemingly ran straight towards my car, and I'm 100% certain I heard a horrible thud of the poor thing going under my car, even over my loud music. This is when it gets weird. I stopped immediately. I adore animals, and I was also quite distraught, to say the least, at the prospect of running over a poor cat, and indeed someone's beloved pet. I was also quite shaken, as I was relatively new to driving, and I knew my mother was going to be furious if I damaged the car. I get out and notice there's no cat. I checked thoroughly, as I was pretty sure I'd hit the wee cat. I started to reassess what had happened here, and I looked over to where the black cat had been sitting before this horror, and the same black cat was sitting exactly in the exact same place I'd seen it on my approach, completely unharmed, sitting like nothing had happened. I went over to the cat to see if maybe I had hit it and it was just stunned or something, but nope, the cat was perfectly fine and almost happy to meet me. I got back in the car and got on my way. It puzzles me to this day. I'm certain I hit that little thing. Thankfully, it was just some sort of glitch. I live on my own, and I am the only one who has a key to my apartment. 2 weeks ago, I left my place to go on vacation. I have a small black plastic coffee maker that came with a small black plastic spoon for coffee beans. I had it for about 2 months before I went on vacation. I distinctly remember this spoon, and it was black, just like the coffee maker. When I returned home, I couldn't find my coffee spoon anywhere. I checked all over my kitchen and apartment for it. That's weird, but I figured I probably accidentally threw it away or something. This morning, I tried looking for the spoon again, and I found a different spoon in my sink. It's a small coffee spoon, but it's white, and it also has a missing shape to the other one I had. I have no other appliances, and I have no idea where the spoon came from, and I don't remember using this spoon for anything ever. It's kind of insignificant, but it's driving me nuts. Maybe it was a white spoon all along and my brain remembered wrong. Where did my original coffee spoon go? Hey guys, it's Mort here and thank you so much for listening. Hope you didn't glitch out during the video. If you enjoyed it, drop a like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe if you're new. And why not press the bell icon for good measure to be notified every time I post? Now, like I said at the start, if you're interested in becoming a patron and benefiting from a range of exclusive and awesome perks, you can find the link in the description. It really would mean a lot to me, and especially during the current climate of things, I'd appreciate it more than ever. If there's a story that you would like shared, feel free to send it to my email, or alternatively, post it on my Reddit. But for now guys, I'm gonna sign off. Stay awesome, and within your own reality, and I'll see you in the next one.